Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Telecast TV. I'm Miracle Angala. You're watching a conversation with Honorable Afam Ogene, speaking about the reasons for alteration of the tax law that was passed to the Federal House of Assembly, was altered under the Tinubu administration. Endeavor to subscribe, like, comment. Endeavor not to miss trending videos.
The laws. Let me remind you of what the lawmaker saw and his concern about the laws as being passed and some of the copies and the versions that are flying around. Take a listen to the lawmaker on the floor of the House. This was sometimes late last year. Take a listen.
Mr. Speaker, I took my time in the last 3 days to look at the gazetted past copy, the vote and proceedings of the House of Representatives, and also went an extra mile to look at the vote and proceedings of the Senate of what was harmonized. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, what I passed on this floor is not what is gazetted. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I have all the copies, but I'm coming under privilege because I was here, I gave my vote, and it was counted, and I'm seeing something completely different.
You heard the lawmakers, but there's been public outrage and serious constitutional questions that have been raised following revelations by the lawmakers of alleged alterations of Nigeria's newly signed tax reform laws after concerns were raised on the floor of the House over discrepancies between the versions passed by lawmakers and those later gazetted. The minority caucus set up a fact-finding committee to probe what it described as an attack on the independence of the legislature. An interim report by that committee has now confirmed the existence of multiple versions of key tax acts, identifying contentious changes affecting tax thresholds, enforcement powers, appeal procedures, and parliamentary oversight. The Speaker has since ordered the release of the certified copies of the laws and an internal verification to restore public confidence. Joining us tonight is the chairman of the Minority Caucus of the Ad Hoc Committee on Tax Laws, Honorable Afam Ogene, to explain the findings, implications for governance, and what happens next. Thank you so much, Honorable, for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Sheum, and a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. Happy New Year to you.
Good evening, Nigerians.
Yeah. Are you, okay, I know that I saw you in Enugu, but are you ADC or a Labour Party?
Well, you know that on a lighter note, the kind of brand of politics we play now, you can be in PDP, you're working for APC, and you're in PDP, ruffling waters. But to answer your question directly, I'm transiting from the Labour Party.
But you have not entered your destination yet.
I've already taken my boarding pass to go into the African Democratic Congress, ADC.
From the Labour Party?
Yes.
Well, it does look like there's a settlement in court now as to the leadership of the party. Are you able to reconsider your decision of exiting the Labour
settlement?
Party?
The issues are quite clear to Nigerians. The only person that was being chased out of the Labour Party was Mr. P2B.
Why do you say so? Who's chasing him?
The powers that be, interest groups.
Is it Governor? Is it Governor Alex Oti that chased him?
No,
or Abure?
No. Governor
when
Alex
you say powers that
be,
who are the powers that be in the Labour Party that's chasing him?
The people who control the executive and the judiciary. The Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, in June last year, did give a far-reaching decision in which they pronounced that the tenure of Mr. Barrister Julius Abure was effectively over, and that parties are bound to use their internal mechanisms to resolve issues. And if Abure's tenure was over, as the Supreme Court noted in that well-considered judgment, we took the CTC, certified true copy of that same judgment, to INEC with Mr. P2B, Governor Alex Oti, senators, House of Reps members, and State Assembly members to INEC. And INEC did nothing about that, only for them to issue a statement 4 days after Mr. P2B declared for ADC that Abure's tenure had long lapsed. And that was now followed up by the judgment from Honorable Justice Lifu, confirming what we already knew all along. That's why I said the whole fight was about Mr. P2B.
So what you are inferring is they wanted P2B out of Labour Party.
Of course.
And you think that this was orchestrated? INEC is being used to orchestrate this?
We Africans, if the witch cries in the night and the baby dies in the morning, who killed the baby?
What exactly are you talking about?
I am saying that as soon as Mr. P2B left, they felt comfortable enough.
Who is behind all of
this? Who
is doing this?
I wouldn't know. We should be asking INEC why it took them that long to return the party to the people who should run the party.
So you blame INEC for destabilizing Labour Party?
They have a hand in it, because in September 2024, the stakeholders of the party in Umuahia on September 4, 2024, did set up an interim National Executive Council led by former Minister Senator Esther Nenadi Usman. So why did it take INEC 1 year, 6 months to recognize Nenadi as chairman of the Labour Party?
Let me leave you, since you have jumped ship and you have abandoned your home and the platform that gave you your seat in the House, let's talk about the issue of governance. So you chaired the committee to probe the alleged alteration of the tax laws, the gazetted copies. And there is a report from your committee, an interim report. It does look like there is a position identified and there are findings that your committee have come around to. What exactly how would you summarize your committee's findings?
Well, first, let me react to the fact of having jumped ship. I did not jump ship. This is an election year because primaries will begin in a few months' time. And so if you stay in a place that has become toxic as a politician, you also have to look for a place, to identify with. So that is what has happened. Coming to your question regarding the alleged alterations in the tax laws. Yes, I was in my constituency on January 2nd, 2026, when I was named as chair of a 7-man committee of the Minority Caucus to look into these allegations. And we got to work, even though in your opening remarks you said the National Assembly members remain on holidays. Even sitting here is work for me, talking about issues surrounding the National Assembly. But to answer your question directly, the committee did indeed discover that there are different versions of the Tax Act. And who has done that? We do not know. You know that by parliamentary practice, you are given either 7 days or 14 weeks to turn in a report. And that's why we have labeled this an interim report and asking the minority leadership to give us the leeway to dig deeper and find out who must have done what.
What you have found out is true to what your colleagues said on the floor, that there are discrepancies in the sense that to the extent that what we have or what we know, there are different versions. But what we should concern ourselves with is the fact that there is a tone of finality on what was passed by the lawmakers, which a lot of people would think that by the proceedings or the process of passing a law, once it leaves the corridors of the National Assembly, it goes on for the president's assent. And a lot of Nigerians would think that between that journey from the National Assembly to the president's table for assent, nothing should be added, nothing should be subtracted. Am I right?
You are correct, but it's not as easy as that.
Okay.
When the laws are passed, we run a bicameral legislature. The House of Rep passes it, the Senate does. If there are fundamental issues of to be looked at, then we'll have a conference committee that looks at it. And then a final clean copy is sent by the clerk of the National Assembly to Mr. President for his assent. If he doesn't have issues with it, he gives his assent. And then it becomes an executive function to gazette that act so that it becomes amongst our codified laws, and the copy is sent to the judiciary via the Supreme Court. The National Assembly has its copy, the National Library, and all of that. So in between those processes, anything could have happened.
So your findings here, according to your committee, is that we now have 3 versions of the tax administration law, right? That's what you found out.
Yes, but in the midst of these investigations, we also discovered that there were efforts to try to get back to what the National Assembly originally passed. And the challenge now would be to find out who even went to the extent of changing certain aspects.
So let's get it categorically right now. Tonight, you are telling Nigerians that the gazetted law, as is being circulated, is being altered, is being doctored, or has been doctored.
Shane, it will interest you to note that before we even raised the alarm, some of our members did go to the Federal Ministry of Information and purchased a copy of the gazetted law, especially the Nigerian Tax Administration law. But by the time this issue was raised on the floor of the House, I think December 16 or thereabouts, we went back the next day to Federal Ministry of Information, and they weren't selling. So when you say the one in circulation, I doubt if there is anyone even in circulation, because if it's in circulation, it should be available to the ordinary Nigerian. And then they went ahead, even in their portal, the Fiscal Reform portal, that they had uploaded the gazetted copy. The one that was doctored, they had to pull it down. So some of these shenanigans easily point to one fact. Even Mr. President did agree in his statement on December 30 that there were issues with the tax laws. I'll just read you one paragraph. The presidency pledges to work with the National Assembly to ensure the swift resolution of any issue identified. That clearly tells you that there are issues, even though he thinks that those issues are not enough to disrupt the commencement of the implementation of the tax laws on January 1, 2026.
And it's interesting that where the major problem is there are 4 of those laws, isn't it?
Yes.
Is in the problem fundamentally is the Tax Administration Act
yes.
of 2025.
Yes.
Now, and it's interesting that you have identified about 4 or 5 areas, paragraphs that are being altered, added or subtracted in the law.
Yes.
Am I right? But are these portions that you have identified as being subtracted or inserted or doctored, are they fundamentally consequential to the execution of the law, to the average person?
They are, of course. Every little comma you see in a law has consequences. So if, for instance, you take away the power of the National Assembly to review what you're doing or for you to report back, and then you also give yourself the power of arrest, which wasn't in the original bill, later an act signed by Mr. President, then you're giving yourself powers that are ultra varies your original jurisdiction.
Let me let Nigerians know. Tonight, in that report, you've reported preliminarily to say that first, Section 29(1) of the Tax Administration Act of 2025. You see, on the reporting threshold, why the National Assembly certified version provided for a tax compliance reporting threshold of 50 million for individuals and 100 million for companies. The gazetted version lowered the reporting thresholds for individuals to 25 million from 50 million and 100 million from 250 million for companies. This is a clear case of the executive undermining legislative powers by illegally altering an already passed law to drag more taxpayers into the net. So the inference here is that Section 29 has been altered and those figures have been changed. It then means that the changes they've made to it will allow more people to be dragged into the tax net.
Yes. And then the reporting threshold for corporate entities that was initially set for 250 million was now lowered to 100 million, which means that if you are a corporate organization and you undertake transactions up to 100 million naira, then it will be flagged.
But there's this position by those who find this curious. I'm hoping that, and the reason why we are having this conversation is that Nigerians need to know, and the federal government and those who are in the first place pushing for the tax reforms are saying, to what extent? We were the one who proposed these laws. Why are we going to now alter it? It doesn't make sense, Honorable. How would you accuse the executive of altering a law in which this was an executive-backed law?
No,
amendment?
No law comes from the executive and goes, not many laws comes from the executive and return to the president for assets the way they came.
But they are saying that the way and manner, they were the one who pushed for these laws.
Yeah.
They were the one who pushed for the reforms. They were the ones who drafted it and pushed it for the passage of the National Assembly. Does it make sense for them to have been the one now altering it?
It does. What it means is that you have made a proposal. Whatever you bring, be it an executive bill, is a proposal before the National Assembly. And when you bring it as a proposal, for instance, you want the reporting threshold to be 25 million, 50 million, for instance, and no, they wanted 25 million and we said 50 million. Now, if you go back after the act has been passed to insert your original intention, the wisdom of one man or a committee cannot be superior to the collective integrity and wisdom of 360 members of the House and 109.
There are other areas they were pointed at, and this is actually very concerning. Section 64, which is the enforcement and power of arrest. Yeah. Your committee you said, and you have identified, you said, the Gazetted Law illegally increased the powers of the tax authority to include the power to arrest individuals suspected of tax violation through law enforcement agencies and allowed for the sale of seized assets without a court order, which means that if Honorable Ogene is found to have breached the tax law in violations, either undercutting his reporting or his companies or his individual tax reporting or whatever, if you're found guilty, that the tax authority have the power to arrest and also to seize your asset and sell your asset without a court order.
That was the intent of the alterations.
So, but originally, what was the position of the law before you identified this?
No, this was a clear instruction.
It was not there at all.
Yes.
The power of arrest and all of this was not there.
It was a clear instruction.
Another one that you have identified is the definition of what is called federal taxes.
Yes.
And you said in that, it said the National Assembly certified version defines federal taxes to include income tax, petroleum tax, blah, 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 and the rest. The Gazetted version removed petroleum income tax and VAT from the definition of taxes under the federal government's administration. You said in your committee's report that we consider this as an affront to the executive powers, exclusive powers of the National Assembly to make laws.
That's correct.
So where is now the petroleum income tax and VAT? How are they being defined?
Well, that is why we said that this requires further investigations for the concerned individuals and organizations to come and give explanations to this.
And
these are only red flags that we have raised.
And are there more?
There are more, of course.
You've only identified, out of the four, you only identify in one of the acts, in one of the laws, which is the Tax Administration Act.
Okay, even the Nigerian Revenue Service
Establishment Act.
You
found the issue there?
Yes, the issue of oversight why the authentic version passed by NAS provided that National Assembly can summon, demand reports, or enforce accountability in line with its constitutional role of oversight. The altered gazetted version curiously deleted this provision requiring quarterly and annual reporting to Parliament regarding the Nigerian Revenue Services, in total disregard and disrespect of the institution of the National Assembly and the doctrine of checks and balances, an important bedrock of Parliament.
So let's establish to Nigerians tonight the procedures of law for anyone who is a student of parliamentary processes will know that there are stages in the passage of laws. It goes the first reading, the second reading, the committee stages, and the public hearing. It goes back to the floor, is passed, and is being technically looked at. Then is then eventually passed. When it's passed and there is concurrence between the two arms of government, then you find a clean copy and is now being finally passed on the general floor for assent, presidential assent. So by law, whatever that is passed, nothing should be added or subtracted after that. Is that the situation?
That is the contention, and that's the situation.
Is that the position of the Constitution?
Yes, that's the position.
So anything added or subtracted to it is unconstitutional. It's criminal. It's illegal.
It's criminal. It has a criminal intent, and it's illegal, and should not stand.
But the executive,
in fact,
the executive is denying that this has happened.
They don't need a denial. What we need is an open and transparent investigation process. In fact, in our recommendations, one of the recommendations is that the minority caucus should, by way of motion, seek a mandate, set up a committee to review all previously passed and assented laws since this 10th Assembly. And I can wager a bet that you will find one or two that fall into this category. Additionally, some members are canvassing for a public hearing on this matter to be televised live so that the key dramatics personnel can come out and tell Nigerians what they
Who are those you think should be answering questions in this sense?
Sean, it might interest you that in the course of this work, we wrote to several organizations, and none besides the Director Litigation, National Assembly, who had an exchange with me regarding certain clarity that he wanted. Well, we wrote to the Honorable Minister of Information, under whose watch the Nigerian printing press that should roll out the gazetted copies is, the Chief Librarian, the Chief Registrar, Supreme Court of Nigeria, the Presidential Liaison Officer to National Assembly, the Executive Chairman, Nigerian Revenue Services, Zach Adedeji, the Clerk, House of Reps, and the Clerk, National Assembly. And it will be shocking that none of them, as we speak, has been able to commit anything in writing.
Up to now?
Yes, after at least a week.
Because there are those who will say, if you ask the clerk, the version that was given to him, because it was the office of the clerk that should transmit to the presidency the fine copy that had been drafted. And I was at a forum where Mr. Taiwo Yedele was present, and I asked him categorically, who doctored it? And he said he wasn't doctored. And he blamed that in the process of passing laws and gazetting laws, they're all still manual, typing, and instead of digitally computing some of these things, and there are possibilities of all of these clerical errors. And in all of this, he made it clear that it doesn't make sense for anyone to think the executive can be altering a law that the executive itself originated.
Well, Mr. Oyedele, with due respect, cannot pick and choose. This was the same man who, on Arise Television, handed a copy over to Rufai Oseni, a gazetted copy, around December 21 or 22. The same man, the presidency tweeted, where he presented to Mr. President around December, is it December 26th? So what was he presenting? First, he presented to the journalists a gazetted copy. And when the National Assembly ordered that, it should be re-gazetted, or the CTC of what will pass should be released to the public, Mr. Oseni cried out that he was at variance with what he was handed by the same Oyedele. I don't think he has taken up issues with Oseni on that. And then what did he present to Mr. President on December 26th? As put out on Twitter, X, by the President.
Let me probably just quickly remind our viewers what Mr. Oyedele said on this, because it is novel to find these reforms. But however, all of these controversies are marring some of what could become a positive out of it. This is what Mr. Oyedele said when I asked him this question at this forum.
So we did not forge anything. It wasn't anything. It doesn't even make sense. When the executive was the one that drafted it, it will now be forging it. Like what end? All those things that they learned that were forged, you're going to have to say who benefits from all of that, right? So I'm not going to make any conclusions. I'm just saying the nation, we should please look at that process so that we have the quality assurance. Whatever laws we enact, we can take it to the bank that this is the true reflection of what our lawmakers representing all of us have enacted. I have no issues with KPMG, they are my friends. But one thing I see I'll continue to do is, I will not say just in the interest of saying we are very receptive to feedback. We won't take anything. If you take just anything, that is not in national interest. We must put out the truth, whether it is hard, whether it is soft, whether people want it or not. Trust is not built in the moment. It's built over time. Sometimes people will know in 10 years, in 2 years, in 5 years. Let it be that when that truth is known, you were on the right path of that journey.
That's Mr. Oyedele. On the final note, how do you respond?
Well, I think that Mr. Oyedele still have some explanations to give to make it, make meaning. He is not a lawmaker, so he could speak the way he has chosen to speak. But he did also concede that there could be clerical errors. But the Acts Authentication Act, passed in 1961, that took effect from January 1, 1962, later codified as Laws of the Federation of Nigeria in 2004, talks about certifying accuracy. Only properly passed laws that are authentic and accurate that can instill confidence in the people. So we cannot begin to, when you even alter a comma in English, it conveys a different meaning. So while two judges can give divergent views on a particular issue, but lawmaking should not convey any hazy meaning.
Honorable Ogene, thank you so much, Chairman, House Minority Committee on the investigation on the alleged alteration of the tax laws. Thanks so much indeed for joining us tonight.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.